What is going on, YouTube and Diablo fans? My name's Andreas, and as always, welcome back to Mana and Motherboards. Today we are going to take a quick dive into the new Diablo 4 expansion, Lord of Hatred. So this is quite a lot to cover, and I will try to be as brief as possible, but it's also a very exciting time for the Diablo franchise, as well as Diablo 4 in specific. So let's dive a bit into what we can expect from this new expansion for Diablo 4, and what have the changes been over the years, and is this sort of a new game in its entirety? So when Diablo 4 launched to how it is now is completely different basically, and over the various seasons and patches and expansions that they've had, the game has changed so substantially and fundamentally that you can't even really call it the same game that it once was when it launched, or even throughout its years of being around. The game has changed substantially, and at times for the worse and at other times for the better. And I think where the Lord of Hatred expansion sort of culminates all of these changes, it's possibly going to be in its best state ever. So what can we expect from this new expansion, Lord of Hatred, that is releasing on the 28th of April, which I think is Tuesday coming up now? A weird sort of time to launch it, in my opinion. I don't know what the reasons are behind that, but anyway, that is what it is. So firstly, what can we expect with this new expansion? So a big part of this is going to be, in my opinion, sort of finishing off the story, at least the story of Mephisto. So starting off with the campaign for the Lord of Hatred expansion, we, I think, at the end of this are going to be able to finally face Mephisto in his true form, and not as some sort of other like culmination of Mephisto or manifestation of Mephisto. We're going to actually be able to sort of finish the story and campaign and fight Mephisto properly. And there are hints in the sort of lore content that Blizzard and Diablo have released that this could mean that it's not like when we killed Mephisto in the past, where he could just be reincarnated and reborn from his soul stone and all the rest of that. There are hints that maybe we could kill one of the prime evils for good this time. So I think that is a very exciting element to the whole campaign and storyline. And with the new storyline and campaign, that brings us to our next point, which is the new region for Diablo 4 Lord of Hatred, which is Skovos, the Skovos Isles. And this is the birthplace of the Nephilim, where Lilith and Inarius sort of made their home in Sanctuary and all the rest of that. I mean, I'm not the sort of any form of authority on the law, but that is sort of the idea of it. And it's also the birthplace of the Amazons. So like your Amazon from Diablo 2, this is where their birthplace is. So there's a lot of lore going on around this new region, and it's exciting to get a new sort of base camp region as the foundation for this new expansion. So on to our next point. One of the biggest introductions in this new expansion are the two new classes. So as we saw as a pre-release in Season 11 and a pre-purchase of the Diablo 4 Lord of Hatred expansion, was the introduction of the Paladin. And I played this Paladin in all its sort of builds and forms in the Season 11, and it was such a fantastically crafted class. It really visually was stunning. The way the skills worked were amazing. It was just such a well thought out and executed class. And alongside the Paladin, which is sort of your holy warrior, your typical sort of good hero character, we have the introduction of the Warlock. So there was the Warlock introduced in Diablo 2 Resurrected. We've covered that a lot on the channel. Now we have the Warlock in Diablo 4, as well as the Warlock in Diablo Immortal. And you could almost say this is the opposite to the Paladin, or the sort of anti-hero to the Paladin, where the Warlock commands the dark arts and binds demons to their will, and is just a whole new exciting way, sort of a necromancer evolved, to play a class in Diablo 4. So I am looking so forward to playing this new Warlock class. I'm thinking of starting that as my main class from the get-go. Let me know in the comments what you think. I think going with the Warlock would be best, but I am leaning towards Paladin just because of how well it worked in Season 11, and with all the changes that are coming to the game, it could potentially just be even better in this new expansion coming out now. So we have a new class in the Paladin and the Warlock, so two new classes joining the game, which is so extremely exciting. And the level cap has now been raised from level 60 to 70. If I remember correctly, it used to be 70, it went back to 60, and now it's back up to 70. So the new level cap will be 70, and I believe that Paragon levels will still stay capped at 300. So next in the list of changes to the game now, and one of the biggest ones in my opinion, is the whole reworking of the skill tree for Diablo 4. And this is an area that in my opinion needed huge improvements, and this is now going to be really where your character is crafted and built, and where it's sort of finessed and the essence of your character comes from. The skill tree in the past was quite linear, it was quite sort of boring, it wasn't all that exciting and engaging. It was nothing compared to some of the other skill tree implementations in other sort of top-end ARPGs of this current era. So this is somewhere that Blizzard have put a lot of effort and a lot of energy into changing the skill tree and how we interact with it. So now there are level breakpoints for certain skills that you are putting up, which then enhance and just make the skill so much better. And as you progress through skills, through levels, you unlock new variants of these skills that increase greater functionality and can almost in many ways change the skill completely. I mean, even for instance, changing the elemental damage that it does, or just how the skill actually mechanically works. And you can put, I think, I can't remember if I mentioned or not, 15 ranks into each of these individual skills. So there's extra skill points that we used to spend on passives are now being distributed throughout our skills, because passives are moving to somewhere else that I will explain in a little bit. But basically, passives are no longer part of your skill tree. So the class design for the Paladin, as well as the Spiritborn. So the Spiritborn was released in Vessel of Hatred, the expansion, a few years ago, and the Spiritborn was noted as being the most well-rounded, well-designed character that was released in Diablo 4 that far. And the Paladin that was pre-released now in Season 11 was then also said to be better than anything preceding it, in terms of its design and how it functioned and the thought that went into the skills. And now, with that sort of progression, everyone who had the opportunity to play the Warlock have said that the Warlock is even further in that progression in being the most well-designed class in Diablo 4. And with all of that being said, with the changes to the skill tree now in Lord of Hatred, it's sort of a rework of every class and their skills, that now all classes can share in that sort of modern take and sort of contemporary take in the whole design of the class as a whole, and the way their skills sort of interact and function for that class. So now we're getting that whole revamp of all the classes all together in one, so that we almost have a whole new rework of each of the classes to bring them up to the same level of design as the Paladin, as the Warlock, and the Spiritborn. So not only are the new characters going to be designed really well, but all the characters we know and love from Diablo should share in that upgrade, which is fantastic. So the skill system is completely reworked, and I think it is just so exciting to see all the differences and nuances that they've added to this, and I can't wait to, once the game releases, to dive right into that and start seeing how all these changes actually function in game. So moving on from the skills, which I think was a huge portion of the changes for Lord of Hatred, I think that the next sort of area to focus on would be the items. Now, the items and crafting that have been introduced in this Lord of Hatred is a great evolution of what has come before it, and it's an area that throughout the years of Diablo 4, the devs have constantly been changing itemization and trying to make it better, sometimes failing, sometimes succeeding, and it seems like we are finally getting to a good spot. For Season 11, Season 12, they had already reworked it quite substantially, and it was better than it was in the past. But now I think this is going to be a culmination of many years of work to sort of present us with something truly workable and truly sort of well thought out. So for our items, the first big change in my opinion is the introduction of a loot filter, which will just make your whole gaming experience and quality of life so much better because of the amount of screen clutter we had in the past with no loot filters. And then next up from that is just talking about crafting. So where Diablo 4 itemization lacked a great deal is in customization and crafting, which games such as Last Epoch, Path of Exile 2, Path of Exile 1, they really excelled in the sort of unique ability to be able to craft and build your items sort of as well as you crafted and built your character and your skills. So there is going to be a absolutely deep focus and dive into crafting for this new Lord of Hatred expansion for Diablo 4, and we will be using the Horodric Cube in order to execute this crafting system and new ways of interacting with our items. And these crafting systems will use runes that exist in the games, and runes have also been revised to all fit within your rune tab, which is fantastic and should have always been like that from the get-go. And you will now use these runes as crafting materials, as well as new materials that have been added to the game in order to further customize and tailor your gear specifically how you need it. And this also works in a way that is fantastic, where your gear can scale with you through how you craft it. So let's say you find something that you really like, it's just missing some affixes, it's just missing a certain roll, it's just missing that unique affix that you want, but it needs to be on this specific piece of gear. You can tailor these items over time as you get the materials for it, and as you sort of craft and build your character further, your gear can grow with you. So if you find that one GG item that takes you forever to find, but it needs a little bit of work, you can carry that item with you for a long time and work it to exactly where you need it to get. And the other great thing is, as you're progressing through the game, what loot can drop scales with the difficulty of the game that you're playing. So as your character powers up and levels up, you'll be able to do higher difficulty content and torments, and the gear will scale with what's available to drop with the difficulty of the game. And I think it's just implemented a little bit better in Diablo 4 Lord of Hatred than it was in the past. And now you have more control over your gear and how it sort of fits and suits your characters best. They've also reintroduced sanctification under a new name into the itemization in the game. You can now temper onto uniques and mythics, as far as I believe. There's also a quality of life enhancement where you can now stack crafting materials and similar items in your stash up to 1,000 as opposed to, I think, 100 what it was before. So just a little quality of life increase there as well. And with all of this being said, we are no longer going to have incense and elixirs, which I think is a great thing for the game, because that was always just a little sort of, it didn't really fit the whole flow and type of itemization and buffs and all of that stuff. So I'm glad that they got rid of incense and elixirs. That will no longer be a part of the game. And the last part of items that I want to talk about is the charm system. So they're going to be using a lot of passives that you used to be able to sort of put your points into or get from gear in terms of pulling legendary affixes from gear and things like that. They are now going to incorporate this into a new charm system for Lord of Hatred, which I think many players have been asking for over the years, is whether charms will be introduced into Diablo 4, and now they are doing that. And these charms will also be class specific as you progress into further difficulties and higher difficulties in the game, and you'll be able to sort of find this whole new rare sort of itemization system through charms, and you will be able to find them, I think, in exciting new ways, and you will be able to use all your gear in exciting new ways because of the new system introduced. And it looks like it will also be the foundation for many new build archetypes. So now you can not only work around specific uniques or specific mythics, and now you can also work around charms as archetypes for specific builds, which is fantastic. So overall, the whole new crafting and itemization that is being introduced in Diablo 4 Lord of Hatred is going to be a really exciting thing, and I think brings the level of Diablo 4 on par where it was lacking to some of its competitive games with their crafting systems in specific. So with all of that being said, sort of the last thing that I want to get into here is the whole new endgame mechanic for Diablo 4. So the whole new endgame mechanic hinges around a new thing called a war plan. So with this war plan, you will be able to tailor what content you are doing, what the difficulty is, what the amount of rewards you get from that sort of tailored warpath is, and it is just a system that gives you a lot more choice in what you do and how you play the game and how the end game works for you. So it's a whole new system that I think really just puts the power back into your hands and lets you do the parts of the game that you enjoy the most. So you will be able to target specific crafting materials, target specific items, play the kind of content that you want to play, craft sort of ways to play the end game that suits you as well as your party members and friends and all of that stuff. And it's just a better way, in my opinion, to not be forced into doing specific types of runs or specific bosses or specific contents that the game dictates to you to play. Now the power and the freedom is in your hand to dictate how you interact with the end game. And I think the level of difficulty scaling that they have added into this also allows for a larger scope of end game content. So I'm super excited for that. We obviously also have the tower and the pit and all of those things. I think they mentioned that they will release the tower a couple days after the Lord of Hatred expansion drops, maybe just to work out a couple things. I'm not sure for the reasoning there, but I'm so excited that now you can say, I only like running pit and I want to do an infernal horde as well as a little bit of bossing over here, and then you tailor your war part towards what you want to do. as well as, like, let's just say you're doing undercity runs or something like that, like, you can tailor what you would drop in certain areas to be dropped in other areas and target specific loot through different activities, which I think is fantastic. And over and above this whole endgame system that they have introduced, which I think looks awesome, there's also going to be new additions to the game, such as a map overlay, just to make your quality of life better and the way that you navigate the game so much easier. They are adding fishing to the game. I know that might be a shock and quite a surprise to a lot of people, but it does sound like they are hinting at a few cool little features there. You can trade fish that you catch. You can fish in almost any area that there's water. They've even hinted that fish aren't the only thing lurking in the water, which I'm excited to find out about. There is just so much more to do in the game now, and it's so much more tailored to you choosing the path that you want to take. And with the new torment difficulty and levels added, you can really sort of play further and deeper into the end game of Diablo 4 Lord of Hatred. So that's about going to wrap it up for this brief introduction to Lord of Hatred. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I am so thoroughly looking forward to this expansion. I was a bit iffy in the past, but after all the new release of information and data that is out on the expansion, I am actually really enthusiastically excited for this, and I can't wait for this expansion to drop next week. Like I mentioned, I would love to play the Warlock. I am leaning towards Paladin. Please comment below what you think I should play as my starter class for this new expansion. We are going to be streaming all of this new fresh content coming out from next Tuesday, the 28th of April onwards. So if you are keen on Diablo 4, I would definitely say that you should subscribe, like, share, all of that stuff, so that you stay up to date. Hit that bell icon. And as well as all of that, we do have a membership part of our channel, so if you'd like to support the channel even further, please consider becoming a member. And it is just such a fresh and exciting time for Diablo 4. I really truly hope that they hit the nail on the head and that they got this expansion right. And one of the most fun parts of all of this is that we all get to dive into this blindly, figure out all these new changes to the games together, and progress through this together. There are cube recipes that are secrets that we have to unlock and figure out, and there's just so much exciting stuff coming out in this game. So I hope you join us for that. And until then, stay tuned for some more Mana and Motherboards. Cheers!